reconnect. Okay, we are back. Please let us know if the camera is straight this time. I believe it is. I think we figured it out. Perfect.
Looks good to me.
The screen is straight. Thank you all for your patience. Just gonna wait just a minute to see who hops on, and then we'll get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and start boiling my water for my lentils so it's ready once I go through my little process on how to prepare it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay. We have 6 people. Hello everyone. As you can see, we are actually in the Learning Kitchen at the Atlanta Community Food Bank today, and I could not be more excited to be here. I've been in this building since March, and it just feels right. We've actually got Miss Joy here, our program manager. She is going to be moderating, so if you have any questions, she will catch those in the chat. And she'll bring them up during the process, or we will just get to them at the end. We'll just see how it goes as we go through this today. So, cool. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, my name is Kristen Elliott. I am one of the registered dietitians at the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And this is our first episode that we are filming here in the Learning Kitchen. So our topic for today are cooking dried beans and lentils and making stretch meals, which helps you save money in the long run, especially right now where meat is very expensive at the grocery store. So what I want to do is start by just talking about how I prepped my dried beans last night and get them boiling, and then I'm going to show you the process for preparing your dried lentils, which is very easy. And then I'm going to talk you through how I prepared our lentil sloppy joes, which is truly a pantry staple stretch meal example, and I'm really excited to share that with you. Cool. Okay, so dried beans and lentils. So the main difference between these two is that dried beans require soaking and lentils do not require soaking. So you can rinse off your lentils and strain them off and boil them directly, and you don't have to soak them overnight or do the quick soak method. So for my dried beans here, last night I soaked them overnight and they actually doubled in size. So the beans were halfway down the bowl, and I just filled the water all the way up over the beans, and then this morning the beans had risen up above the water a little bit, so I just added a little bit more water while I was waiting. So all I need to do with these is drain them off and give them a good rinse. We want to get rid of the water that you soaked in, because that will hold some of the carbohydrates in the beans that can make you gassy in the long run. And we'll talk about that anymore, but I had to bring that little tip up. So all you need to do with your soaked beans is soak them overnight, or you can do the quick soak method. So I'll tell you about that in just one second. I'm just going to go drain these over here. There you go. Okay, I'm back. So if you want to do the quick soak method for your beans, all you need to do is add your beans to a pot, cover them with water, and bring it to a boil for about 3 minutes, and then you're going to turn your heat off and leave them there for an hour with the lid on. So that's going to be quicker for you than soaking them overnight, but it does require a little more attention. So if you've got the time and attention to pay to your beans while they're soaking in the pot, you can do that, or throw them in the pot, a bowl with water before you go to bed, and then the next day they're going to be ready for you. Cool. Super simple. When it does come to actually cooking your beans the next day after you have soaked them, it's going to take a little while for them to cook. So you can cook them for maybe up to 3 hours, just depending on the type of bean. Some are harder than others. There is a really quick, awesome way to avoid the soaking method with beans is you can cook them in a slow cooker and you don't have to soak them overnight. So in the resource folder tagged in the caption, you'll find a recipe for slow cooker beans. And for that recipe, you can substitute any flavors or seasonings in that you would like. So that is going to be your quickest, most hands-off version of cooking for your dried beans. Okay. So, onto our lentils, which are kind of the star of the show today, since I'm going to show you how to use them in a stretch meal. So, I've got some brown lentils here, and they're actually pretty similar in color to green lentils, so they can be very easily interchanged. You will treat green and brown lentils the same, and you will treat orange and yellow and red lentils the same. And I say all of these colors, but they all look very similar. So red might actually be orange, or yellow might actually be orange. So just know that those are similar in the way that you cook them. So with the green and the brown lentils, they are going to hold their shape and their texture after they're cooked. So you can serve them as a side dish, and they won't turn to like mush. You can consider them like rice as a side dish. But with red, yellow, and orange lentils, they are going to fall apart and they're going to thicken whatever dish you have them in. So just know that you want to choose the lentil that fits the dish that you're trying to make. So we've got our brown lentils here, and we are using them to stretch out our Sloppy Joe recipe that I've already prepared. So whenever we are cooking lentils, the first thing that we need to do is give them a really good rinse. So they may sometimes come with little bits of rock or sand in the package, and that's just based on how they're processed. It's sometimes hard to avoid it. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna add some water and give them a good rinse. I'm just gonna use my hands here. And you can see sometimes the things that you don't want will float to the top or the bottom, so you just look for that. What I like to do is use a mesh strainer to strain them out, and as I'm doing that, I'm just going to be looking through it and picking. So I actually don't see anything in this little batch, so that's great. So we're just going to drain that off. Okay. So once you have them rinsed and drained off, you want to add them to a pot of water that's already boiling. So there are some specific measurements that you can follow for water for your lentils, or you can fill the pot just like you would with pasta, or like our brown rice recipe that we made a couple of weeks ago. You're going to drain off the extra water, the cooking liquid, so it doesn't matter if you have some left over. The most fantastic part about lentils is they take about 20 minutes to cook. So about the same amount of time it takes for you to prepare the rest of your recipe, your lentils will be done at the end, all at the same time. Okay. So I've got my water here that I brought to a boil already. I'm gonna add my lentils, and I'm just going to let them cook for about 15 minutes. This, the first batch that I made for our Sloppy Joe recipe, it did take exactly 15 minutes. So sometimes it will take a little bit longer. It depends on your cooktop, or there are many reasons why it could be different. Okay, so for our lentil Sloppy Joes, I wanted to make sure that I didn't take up an entire hour of your time like I did last week. So I went ahead and prepared it ahead of time, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we made our meat stretch for this dish. So what I did here was I substituted half of the meat that you might use to make regular Sloppy Joes, and I substituted it with the lentils. So why do we want to do that? Why do we want to make our meat stretch? There are many reasons. For one, like I said at the beginning, meat's really expensive right now. I went to the store yesterday to check on prices, and 2 pounds of ground beef was around $10. and that is very expensive. So lentils, you can get a 2-pound bag of lentils for right around $2 or $3. So if you compare getting 20 servings out of our 2-pound bag of lentils versus 8 or 10 servings, maybe, if you're really following the serving size on your ground beef, you're really saving a lot of money on incorporating lentils. Not to mention you are adding so many extra nutrients that you wouldn't get out of just using meat. Do you all remember the Meatless Mondays recommendation? Well, you can start incorporating that just across your meals just to save your food dollars. So what I did was I started cooking the onions in a little bit of olive oil that was warmed, and then I went ahead and added about half a pound of, I used turkey, ground turkey. And so once my turkey was cooked through, I went ahead and added my seasonings. So I mentioned before that this is truly a staple pantry meal. So instead of using a can of Manwich or Sloppy Joe sauce, I made a sauce from things most people would have in their refrigerator or pantry. So our seasonings are chili powder, cumin, and garlic powder. 1 tablespoon each of those. I used a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce as the base of our sauce, and then I used 1/4 cup of each yellow mustard and barbecue sauce. So that sounds weird, but we have condiments that we can use for other than dipping, right? So we made our own sauce here, and I developed this recipe with input from other food bankers to make sure that it was as close as it could be to the canned sauce. So once your meat and your onions are cooked, I like to add my seasonings and just mix them into the meat and onions so they get their flavor started before the sauce is added, and then you just mix in the rest of your sauce ingredients, and then you add your lentils when they're cooked. So your lentils should be completely cooked by the time you've got your sauce and everything ready to go. So you can just drain your lentils, add them directly to your pan, and then you're going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes just so it's not super soupy. So I'm really excited about this, and this is taking not much time at all because I'm almost finished. So this has been a learning process for us. So my Sloppy Joes are already prepared and they're ready to go. So I don't know how good of a visual you can get with this. I'm gonna get close to it. Let's see, the light is over here actually. So we've got, on our Sloppy Joe recipe, this is gonna make 8 servings. So that can be 8 1/2 cup whole sandwiches, or you can use sliders, which I'm going to use today for serving, and you can put 1/4 cup on each of those sliders. You can also serve this over brown rice, or you can serve it with pasta. You have many options. It does not have to just be the traditional way. Always consider what you have available in your pantry before deciding it has to go on a bun. So I'm gonna use my little 1/4 cup measuring cup to just serve up my little sliders, and this is actually the perfect amount for a little slider. There we go. Cool. So we've got our little sliders here, 1/4 cup each. Ta-da! So when you're adding lentils to your dish, you're saving on a lot of extra fat that can come from whatever meat you decide to choose. You're also gaining a lot of nutrients that are missing. So you're gonna have an extra boost of fiber, plant-based protein, but also an extra boost of iron. Our dried beans and lentils have really high source of iron, and there are a lot of people who are deficient in iron. One thing that you can do is serve any food that is high in iron with something that is a good source of vitamin C. So iron and vitamin C work together to make sure that your body absorbs all of the iron that you're ingesting. Otherwise, your body can't absorb it without the vitamin C. So in this dish, we have the tomato sauce, which is high in vitamin C, and that's going to help us absorb all of the iron from our lentils and from our meat. You can also add things like chopped bell peppers or even broccoli. Broccoli is high in vitamin C, or potatoes. So you've got a lot of options there. So let's see. One thing I wanted to, let's see. I think that's everything, y'all. I've flown through this very quickly. So, Joy, do we have any questions that anyone would like to have answered?
Lindy says it was smart to do this near lunchtime, and I would agree because I get to smell it and it's making me very hungry. Althea said, lentils are so underrated. Thank you for this recipe.
Absolutely.
And again, you can find the link to the recipe in the
caption
in the
of the video. Yeah. And
Yes.
you can also go back and find any of the resources from the first 2 episodes there as well. I would like to add that for this week, I have included extra recipes that use lentils and split peas. Lentils, split peas, and dried beans. So if you need some ideas on how to use those and incorporate them into your diet, we've got some very simple recipes there that you can use, like our chicken tacos recipe that uses chicken and black beans to bulk it up.
Let's see, we've got a couple more questions here. Veronica says, would this freeze well? I've never cooked with lentils before.
I would say yes, it would freeze well. The same way you can freeze brown rice and then thaw it out and reuse it, I would recommend that you make sure that your lentils are going to be used inside of a dish, not as a side. So if you wanted to have lentils, like seasoned lentils as a side dish by themselves, I wouldn't freeze those and then thaw them out. I would use the lentils that have been frozen inside of a dish, just to make sure that if they lost a little bit of their texture, their integrity, they're gonna be mixed into something and it'll work out in the long run. Good question, Veronica.
All right, Lan says, what would you serve these with?
Plain lentils or the sloppy joes themselves. So I'll answer both of those. With the plain lentils, if you're using brown or green lentils, you can use those as a side dish and you can season them to match whatever else you're serving. So if you're making some barbacoa meat and you're eating tacos, you can season your lentils with some cumin and maybe lime juice, and that will match really well together. You can also just use some garlic powder and onion powder and serve them over rice. So that's a couple of good ways to serve it. As the sloppy joe mix, I would eat this either on a bun or on some brown rice with a big green salad or some broccoli or whatever version of vegetable you want to add with it to make sure that your dish is well-rounded. Another thing that you can do with your brown and green lentils is once you cook them, you can let them cool down and then you can mix them into your green salads. So you'll get a little bit of texture from that, but you'll get some additional protein that you can substitute in there for really cheap.
Some more comments that we have. Lindy says, I also noticed how expensive ground beef was yesterday. Great idea for stretching and adding nutrition.
Thanks, Lindy.
And Denise says, a quick video is welcome. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. I'm trying really hard to make sure that they are much smaller. I think this one's going to be gold star.
And Dustin says, how do we convince meat eaters to try more meatless dishes? For some, they've never considered or thought about meatless dishes.
That is a really great question. And the concept of a stretch meal where you substitute in some lentils or beans for your meat is going to be a really great place to start. So you don't have to start with half of the dish. meat and half lentils or beans. You can start with just a quarter cup mixed into the mix, and then as you continue serving it, you can add a little bit more as you go. So that's a really great question. Thank you for that.
And Jennifer Weissman says, as a taco or burrito filling would be good too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You could change up you could use this base, and instead of using barbecue sauce and mustard, you can add other seasonings in it to make it not be sloppy Joe, but more taco filling or chili, so many things.
Ooh, I like the idea of chili. That sounds great. That is all of our comments. I'm going to go ahead and post the link to the survey.
Perfect. So this is new for this episode. We have created a survey to get some feedback from our viewers. We are looking for some new ideas on what our next few videos should be as far as topics go. And we want to know where you're coming from and how you heard about us, and how confident you feel about including beans or lentils in your meals going forward. So if you've got a minute, please just click on that link in the comment from Joy and just give us your feedback so we can continue to serve you guys in a way that's helpful. Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, and be safe, and we'll see you in a couple more weeks.
Thanks, guys.